Hey everyone, it's Colin with Legalized Mischief Productions. Thank you for joining me and welcome. And today I'm going to be showing how to paint a glowing thunder hammer. I'm using this Blood Angels Smash Captain for the tutorial, and he has obviously a thunder hammer. And I'm going to be using the same concept as like the Power Stroke tutorial. The key is to get a lot of contrast to get that really glowing look. So I'm going to show how I mask off the model, obviously, because, he's painted. And then I'm going to show how to get that thunder hammer. And for the color, I'm going to be doing turquoise. I'm actually going to be using the same colors I used on these gems here. It's going to be kind of my tertiary color for this army. But they're coming out of the airbrush and they're going to be brighter. So it's going to read a little differently than these stones down here, but the tone is going to be the same. And that's actually going to make a really nice connection between this part of the model up here and this part of the model down here, and make a nice line that draws basically right through his face. And so visually, it's going to tie the model together really well. So first things first, I'm going to get some saran wrap, because taping this whole model would be kind of a royal pain. So I'm just going to avoid that altogether. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tear a little hole in the saran wrap. So if you can see that, there's a little hole right here. I'm going to poke the thunder hammer through that and then kind of drape the saran wrap over the rest of the model, so I know that there's no kind of leakage. There are no gaps in the saran wrap going around the model. So the whole model's protected. It took 2 seconds. But up here, it's not a perfect seal, obviously. So I'm going to grab some Tamiya tape. I love Tamiya tape. I think it's worth the extra money. I've had the most success with Tamiya's tape. You can use painter's tape or masking tape or whatever. But for me, I really, really, really like Tamiya tape. It's low tack. It peels really easily. It applies really easily. So the sharp edges, which is really important a lot of the times with masking. And what I'm doing here, so I tore off a little piece. And what I'm doing is I'm just kind of working into my fingers. And you can hear that tackiness. I don't need this to be super sticky. So I'm actually taking a lot of the glue off the back of the tape, because really the last thing I want is to rip any paint off this model. I don't think it's going to happen because it has a couple coats of varnish on it, but just better to be safe than sorry. So I'm taking that tackiness off. And now I can come back and touch up like this gold down in here if I really need to, but I don't really want to. So I'm going to try and get this just right on the first try. Press that down. Make sure I have good adhesion there. And then I'm going to take another just little tiny piece. Again, get a lot of that tackiness off. Because you can see on the bottom of the thunder hammer, I still have a gap there. And since I'm going to be painting the bottom of it, I want to make sure. And for this, I'm just going to come in kind of horizontally. And then I picked up some of these cheapo kind of silicone tipped sculpting tools from the art store. These are for like clay and stuff. These are great because they're so soft. You're not gonna like scrape paint off the areas that you're pushing down on, but they're firm enough to get a seal with the tape. So these are a neat little tool. Fingernail always works. So that looks just double and triple checking. But again, if this goes sideways, it's not the end of the world. I can always touch up the gold. I just want to make sure I don't get back to like the gem or anything like that. So now we have that masked off. The model is masked off well. I'm not worried about any kind of paint getting on the model because that's completely covered with the saran wrap. And so I'm going to be using Stegadon Scale Green for the base, and then Vallejo Model Color Turquoise, Vallejo Model Color Blue Green, and then white. So I'm using my detail brush, my fine detail brush, what I use for a fine detail brush, Badger Patriot 105 Extreme. And I'm using a super fine detail kit for the needle. I think it's a 0.3 millimeter needle. Really, really small application because I'm going to need to paint some really small areas in the middle of this Thunderhammer's sides here. So I like the Extreme because you can adjust the pressure on the bottom, and it just gets a really fine. It gets a really fine line. So I love this brush. Badger's great. Patriot is great. But for little tiny stuff like this, I like using my Extreme. So first things first, we're going to get that Stegadon Scale Green. It looks like I need to get more Stegadon Scale Green. All right. And I'm just going to try it out on my hand real quick. The pressure's a little high. It's pretty small area. So, but this we're just doing just an overall base coat over the black because we want this to be really dark, but we want it to have a little bit of color to it. Try and get kind of the back side of that Thunderhammer a little bit, just in case there's any gold lingering there. Oops, that was a little heavy. That's okay. That's all going to be covered, basically. So there's not really, Stegadon Scale Green is really dark, so there's not an appreciable difference from black, but there's definitely a difference. But we want this to be really dark. We don't want to like start from a white primer and have it be really vibrant. That glowing effect is going to come from the fact that it's going from a very dark base to really light in the middle. So next I'm going to be using the Vallejo Model Color Turquoise. And now I'm going to be concentrating more in the center. I'm working towards the center of the facings of the hammer. And I'll show you, I'll obviously be showing you what I mean by that. But so I always test it on my hand first, just to make sure that I have the right consistency, I have the right pressure, I'm able to get kind of a small enough dot, as it were, and then I'll move on to the model. So first thing, I really want to just be a little bit gradual, and I just want to pull back kind of as target practice. See how I was way far off to the right? That's okay. It's not the end of the world. I can always come back and fix that if I really want to. But I need to move my brush a little bit to the left. There we go. Now I'm in the middle. And what I'm doing here is I'm kind of, when I'm holding it like that, where you just hear the air, what I'm doing is I'm feathering the trigger like that until I kind of build up some paint. And then once I get a good kind of spot where the paint's flowing, then I can, that's what I don't want. So then I can open it up a little bit. But initially, I don't want to just pull back and have that happen. So initially, I'm just feathering the trigger and building up that paint more slowly, just because I don't want to haul back on the trigger and have it dump a lot of paint and ruin. Because I want to keep the edges of the Thunder Hammer dark, but this is going to be a circular highlight here. So you can see it's covering most of the facing, and that's fine for the turquoise. And then we're going to come back with blue-green. Feather, feather, feather. Whoops. Let that dry out. Oof. Feather, feather, feather. That pressure's too high. There we go. I was having better luck with the jump pack tutorial. All over the place a little bit right now. Oh, come on. There we go. So that facing ended up mostly turquoise, which is not what I wanted. I want more like, whoops. I want it more like that, where you can see the Stegadon scale green on the outside. So I'm actually going to come back and fix that facing. So feather, feather, feather. Oops. Can we see this? Is this super dark? What's going on here? So you can see that building up in the middle there. And that's more what I want there. That is not. So again, check. Oops. See, that's why I checked. Now we're going to get the bottom of this. Kind of end up in the middle. Feather, feather, feather. Okay. So before I do the blue-green, I'm going to come back and I'm going to try and just hit the corners of this with that Stegadon scale green. And the nice thing here is I can start off the model and kind of pull it across the corner. And now I'm back to a more circular highlight in the middle. Not perfect, but I didn't really want to, if it could have been avoided, I didn't really want to go back and do another coat of the Stegadon and then go back to the turquoise. So that just saved me one step of going back to the turquoise, because in truth, a lot of that turquoise now is going to get covered with this blue-green. Really just the edges are going to show. So, and again, if I get to the end of this and I'm not happy with that facing on the Thunder Hammer, that's fine. I can just go back and paint it, you know? I don't have to lose sleep over it. It's not, it's not something that can't be fixed, right? It's not something like, the pigments on his feet or something where if I mess those up, you're just hosed. You know? This is something that I can definitely go back and paint. So, here just making sure, again, nice little dot. And then we're going to try and translate that over to the model. Actually, this model's a little tall, so I'm going to raise up my camera here. Okay. So, nice little dot. And then feather, 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 feather. Right in the middle there. There we go. Clean it off. And this is really, I really don't want any spatter. Spatter is going to be my enemy here. So, feather, feather, feather. Looks like I'm in the middle. So I just keep adding a little bit more, building up that color. Ooh, good thing I tested it off the model. You get that paint off the tip there. Feather, feather, feather. See, I was a little off to the right there. That's fine. Just work my way a little bit to the left. It's good. This facing is turning out pretty much exactly how I want it, which is great because it's the front facing of the Thunderhammer. That other facing that I'm kind of struggling with is the rear facing. Of course, they all matter, but I was a little heavy-handed on that one. Not really heavy-handed enough on this one. So the important thing here is the dark edges. Yeah, see, that's a little much on the top there. This is tough. This is, precision work. This is not the easiest thing in the world to do. This is small areas to work in, and it just takes practice. But it's tough. I'm not gonna, sugarcoat it. I struggle with this sometimes, but there are ways we can kind of cheat a little bit and fix it without having to go, oh, now I have to repaint all that. Because that's something that takes a lot of time. So now what I'm doing is I have the Stegadon scale green again, but it's very thin. So you can see there just how thin this is. Like right there, you can see how thin that is. So this is just a glaze consistency. And I'm going to try and do now on this what I did on the other one. Woo! That was coming out hot. So I'm just trying to hit the edges. So I can start off the model and pull it back in a little bit. There we go. And now, you can see that real well. You can see it better there. So now the edges of that are cleaned up a little bit. And then this is the step where we earn our money. This is the step where this really comes together. And that is the really glowy bit in the center. And you want this to be thin because we're going to work it up. And we're going to take just pure white. And then I'm going to, using the dropper bottle, you see this, I'm just going to take a little tiny paint off the top of that. and mix it in the white. So it's not a pure white. It's going to look white on camera. It's not 100% just white. There's a little tiny bit of that blue-green in there, and it just tints it a little bit. Tempting fate by putting the tops back on all these paints. Like, oh, I'm not going to need those again. When the paint gods like to rear their heads, humble you. But we'll see if we can get through this without too much fanfare. So again, testing it off the model on my hand. You can see that nice little dot. Nice little dot. Okay. Feather, feather, feather. And this is like right in the center of that. Boom. That is a glowing thunder hammer. Ha ha! That looks really good. One down, 4 to go. So I just have to do that 4 more times. But that looks really cool. I'm really happy with that. So like we go from that to that just with the white, just with that white step. But all that work that we did beforehand kind of sets the stage. So right in the middle there, feather, 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 feather. Good. Boom. And that feathering really, it's a really great technique. It's one that it just takes a lot of the pressure off. Oh, I have to get everything perfect the first time. I have to have the right kind of trigger discipline and stuff. And it's like, no, you just need to be gentle. Might have gone a little far on the front, but I'm not going back to fix that. Because now, even if I went over with the blue-green, because it's white now, it's not turquoise. I'd have to go back to turquoise and then blue-green and then white. But that looks good, so I'm going to leave that where it is. I went a little heavy on that one, so I'm going to try and not make the same mistake twice. You can see I'm hitting the middle there. So feather, 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 feather. Good. Better on that one than I did on the front. But honestly, I'm splitting hairs. I'm really liking how this is turning out. So, and now, final bit. Feather, 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 feather. Try and find center. There we are. Feather, 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 feather. Done. Boom. You can see those dark edges is what really gives that a nice effect. So now, pretty much my favorite part is taking the masking off and then seeing how it all works with the rest of the model. So for that, sometimes, because I have kind of ham hands, sometimes what I'll do is I'll use my little angle tweezers and I'll come in here and just, you see how easy that Tamiya tape pulls off? Super, super easy. And then now I don't even really want to, but it's not obviously really going to pull. Oh, okay. Took enough of the tackiness off. Sometimes it has trouble coming off of the saran wrap. And what I'll do is I'll just rip the saran wrap, which is what I'm going to do now. I don't want to pull this over what I just painted. So I'm just going to grab both sides of the saran wrap and just pull and just rip it. And that way I'm not dragging it over what I just painted. Come on. Because if that paint is still a little tacky or hasn't set yet, sometimes you can, oops, oh my goodness. See, I'm being so careful and then I just throw the model. Whoop, whoop. Smash cap is ready to smash. That looks pretty good. Really happy with that. Really happy with that Thunderhammer. And it's a nice tie-in to the shield, but you can see like the shield, those don't look exactly like this. This looks different, but it's the same tone and visually just gives a really nice tie-in. So we're almost done with this model. Last thing is painting some wings for his jump pack, the obligatory sanguinary guard wings. That's going to be the next one off tutorial. And then my smash cap will be ready to purge heretics and Xenos alike. So I'm super excited. I love how this came out. That front facing is fine. That back facing that we fixed turned out really well. Bottom facing looks good. Really, I think the best one is probably the top one and that front one. And that's great. When the front facing is the best one, that's a win. So thank you all. Hope you enjoyed it. It's a great practice for kind of being a little bit more fine with the airbrush. And it's a great effect, and it really pops, and it makes a statement in the Army. It's a great spot for your tertiary color in your scheme. So this is a good one. I'm glad that I had the model to do this one, and we'll see you next time for the wings. So thanks, and we'll see you soon.